Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. I was about to say episode there. I've gotten so used to saying episode of JoJo 24 The Rundown over the last year that I almost got the intro wrong. You may have seen by the title, pretty basic video. The 2024 US presidential election is over. Every state, I believe every congressional race, or at least enough for the Republicans to have gained their majority, and every Senate race with an exception in the recount in the Pennsylvania Senate have been called. So it is basically over. We know every result. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to react to one of my first, if not, I think my first overtly analytical videos on the channel. This is from July 9th, and this is a complete guide to the 2024 presidential election, nominees, and who will win. This is a video by me, uploaded on July 9th, 2023. So let me have a think. That's around 16 months ago. This is a 16-month-old video. It's got about 17,000 views, and it was one of the best performing videos that wasn't a no-context political moments in American history video. So I had a lot of fun making it. Now, around this time, it was basically early primary season. So I was pretty, I think, naive in comparison to the knowledge that I gained over the latter half of that year and the early half of 2024. So I'm going to basically take this opportunity to watch this video, and I'm going to react to it. It could be a longer video. I imagine it will be at least 40 minutes long, so if you are planning to watch, then I appreciate that greatly. I'm basically just going to go over and give some commentary, talk about where I was wrong, where I was right, and I thought this might be a fun thing to do. So with that let's get started. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So I think we're going to skip the intro. I did actually just rewatch the intro just to get an understanding of what my operandus modi was, what I was thinking at the time, and I was basically just going on about what I was really intending to do with this series, or what I plan to then become a series. But let's start at around 1:42. I think that's where the timestamp said. So there's a few different issues. I'm on the Wikipedia page here. So number one is that one thing that I dramatically changed is that if I were to make this video again, it wouldn't be in this same style. The Wikipedia format was very simple, very easy to edit. It means that I could get out videos quickly. That was always my intention. It's because politics is a moving game. It is a constantly changing scene, and it was a really very versatile and strong practice. Not a strong practice, but I'd say it was a very efficient practice for me to just, basically, with minimal editing, I cut out some bloopers. I would just go onto the Wikipedia page and comment on things that are on there. It's not what I'd do now. I would script the video completely so that I could structure it completely. I could format it, and I could also then lay it out and edit it. So it would take a little bit more time, but it would be of far greater quality. Something like this would be easier in a fast-paced environment, which politics is, and that was my thinking. But really, I think it's quality over quantity at the end of the day. It's a good place to sort of, get a basic understanding of what's going on. And that's not incorrect, but the problem is that Wikipedia, there's a misconception that the moderators are inaccurate. It's not necessarily true, but moderators do change their minds a lot. So I remember on the when the race was called by, I think it was MSNBC, not MSNBC, but places like Fox News had called Wisconsin and Pennsylvania for Trump. I remember going onto the Wikipedia page, and every time I refreshed, there would be a different outcome underneath Trump's wiki. It would either be president-elect or former president. So that's something that was subject to change, and there are a number of reasons for that. It could be due to bias, it could be due to people wanting to be cautious. A lot of very valid reasons, but to me, Wikipedia is a strong kind of summary, but it's good to always have different sources. Different sort of visual elements of everything, and we can see down here we've got some major issues. So I'll talk about the issues, because the issues actually ended up changing quite a bit. So crime wasn't as significant as was expected, nor was education. Immigration was more significant than expected. Gun control wasn't significant really at all. There was a call from the Harris campaign to ban assault weapons in the late days of the campaign. Healthcare wasn't too big. Abortion access was that was monumental. That was a big part of the Harris campaign, as well as in vitro fertilization. Yeah, transgender issues, I think, was a big part. Yeah, that's what they mentioned down here. The state of the economy was enormous, of course, and election integrity was big too. So it's interesting to kind of get a look as to how that progressed over time. This is a broad outline. Isn't it surreal looking at this here image? We can see that no Democratic nominee nor Republican nominee were confirmed. If you go to this Wikipedia page now, they've got about 96, 97%, 0.7% counted, and you can see that Trump is president-elect with 312 electoral votes with about 15.2% of the popular vote, and Harris has got about 48% of the popular vote. I think California is still counting. They've got about 85% counted, but there's no realistic path for Harris to win the popular vote at this stage. Not all of these are major factors. Crime, for example, it was bigger in the 2022 election. Education. So crime was massive in the 2022 midterms, and that was something that Republicans were banking on. I noticed that there was a big emphasis on crime in Washington State. So Washington State, you had a few congressional races. Mike, I can't remember his name, but there was also a gubernatorial race where I think his name is Dave Reinkart. He was the Republican nominee. He was a former police officer and sheriff. He was going big on crime against the Attorney General, who was Bob Weingart, I think. The Democrat ended up winning because, of course, it was Washington. But it was certainly a very noteworthy campaign. And that will tie into LGBTQ rights and transgender rights and how that factors into education. Immigration's not that big. Gun control's pretty Interesting big. To have me say that so confidently, because immigration did become bigger. I know I just said that it wasn't too big, but it was certainly bigger than was expected, I think. I think the conversation really sparked up after the immigration statistics came in and the amount of people crossing the border. I think the Trump campaign really honed in on that concern in places like the border in the border states. Healthcare, another reason why California was closer than usual. So big. It's mainly three issues: abortion, the state of the economy, and LGBTQ+. So I'd amend that now. In hindsight, the big issues were abortion, state of the economy, and immigration. Transgender issues weren't as significant, I would argue. I think that was more of a congressional issue. I think the legislators really had a focus on that. That's right. And of course, election integrity too, but that's something else that I'm going to discuss when we talk about the Republican primaries. So those are the main issues. If we just go down here, we can see... Okay, so this was back when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was still running for the Democratic nomination. So he's going up against Marianne Williamson. She dropped out. Both of these... so obviously, Williamson dropped out pretty early. I don't think they're mentioning the congressman. Can't remember his name. He ran for the presidency in the Democratic nomination. Yeah, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., obviously, he dropped out, then went to an independent campaign, and then dropped out and endorsed Trump, and now he's looking to like he's going to get a position in the Trump administration. First of all, let's start off with the Democratic primaries. So as of July, this is where I start making calls. This is going to be fun. July 9th, 2023, that's today, we have 3 declared candidates for the Democratic primary. Incumbent President Joe Biden, RFK Jr., who you may have heard about by now, but I'll go into detail by him. He's the nephew of John F. Kennedy and the son of Robert Kennedy, who was a... So I didn't know a lot about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at the time, but I found out that he was actually quite a well-known personality. I've realized that in hindsight, so most people watching the video probably would have heard of him if they were well-versed in politics and particularly New York State politics. Assassinated in 1968. He was the Attorney General. And Marianne Williamson. So this is basically a nitpick, but Kennedy was Attorney General through 61 through 65. So he and Lyndon Johnson hated each other. So I probably shouldn't have said Attorney General bluntly. What I probably should have declared was that he was Attorney General under the Kennedy administration and the early days of the Johnson administration, but he resigned under Johnson because they didn't like each other. He wasn't Attorney General in 1968. He was running for the Democratic nomination. So I'll start off by talking about Joe Biden. Again, this is a very basic detailing of what's going on. So if you don't know a lot about Joe Biden, he's a pretty moderate guy. But what's important is... So I'd probably amend that too, because Biden is a moderate Democrat in some respect. But what he's really what he was, well, he's still alive, but of course he's the outgoing president now, incoming President Trump, and he met at the White House today. Biden was very skilled in his ability, is very skilled in his ability to recognize the path that the Democratic Party is on and reflect it. So his policies reflect that. His behavior reflects that. His opinions, they change subtly but substantially in some ways. Is that I wouldn't call him a moderate these days because the administration has been a little more left-leaning in some respects, but also right-leaning in other respects. Another issue that I've just remembered is, of course, foreign policy, which became far more significant after the October 7th attacks. And Ukraine and Russia, conversations about military spending and defense budgets, they became far more prominent. So that would be the, if we weren't talking about immigration, then I think that would be the third issue. He's focused his campaign around very recently an economic system he's coined Bidenomics. So Bidenomics had just been released when I made this video. I made a video about Bidenomics, talking about it in detail. It's actually one of the videos I was most proud of because I went in deep into economic theory, and I recommend you check that out. I did a video talking specifically about Bidenomics in relation to how it worked with the labor movements and how it worked with the average propensity to consume. I was very happy with that video. So a play on Reaganomics, but it's not trickled down. When I say a play on Reaganomics there, what I meant to say was, I don't know that I meant to say anything else, but what I was referring to was the fact that it was not Reaganomics, not similar. It was just using the same kind of optics. So it was, of course, Reaganomics. If this channel, so it's like it's naming an economic system after the president. So if it were you had Kamalanomics and you had Trumpnomics. We didn't have Trumpnomics, but you have the Trump tariff. So that's really just a I guess you'd call it a malapropism. I used to use a lot of malapropisms. I think I will a lot in this video. Let's see. On economics, he's speaking primarily about job creation, lowering unemployment, and closing tax loopholes. Those are his three. So I'm just having a think about those. First of all, I mean, it's basically tautology to say lowering unemployment and improving job creation. So, you know, grammatical nitpick there, but I would say, yeah, that's probably what he focused on throughout the campaign. Three big things as part of Bidenomics. So Joe Biden's always been a pretty socially moderate but fiscally progressive, fiscally left-leaning individual. So I don't know that I'd agree with that these days. I got to be honest, I haven't looked enough into Biden's legislative record with regard to economics, because he was the chair of the Foreign Committee. He was the chair of the Foreign Policy Committee. He did a lot of work with regard to Central America, and he was heavily invested in those areas. So I don't know a lot about his fiscal stances, but I would imagine he's from Delaware. He's probably right in saying this, but in the future, I wouldn't make a statement like this without having done research about it in the past. He's been campaigning for workers' rights, growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, to an Irish Catholic family, very low class. He's always been able to appeal to that demographic, which is a key component of the Democratic base. So demographic, by that I mean the lower class, the working class population. He is able to appeal to it, but he wasn't really, because in 2020 he won because people were generally unsatisfied with Trump's handling of COVID. So really the more accurate statement would be he was able to appeal to those voters somewhat in 2020, but that was largely a result of COVID's impact. His campaign never really was able to cut through, and this is talking about it from with the benefit of hindsight. He was never really able to talk about it from the perspective of the working class, nor was he really able to get through to them. Joe Biden is currently very unpopular, which is... Yeah, that's true. That remained the case, and that remained the case even after he withdrew. In fact, this was July 9th. This was almost exactly a year and 12 days prior to his withdrawal from the... from the nomination, but yes, he even after he did that, he did not become more popular. I've joked about him becoming more popular because he's been joking a lot, and he's been, dressing differently, and what I think looks very good. But no, his approval ratings have never really substantially improved. The result of a dwindling economy, rising inflation, though recently it's becoming deflation, but that's so deflation, that means decrease. Isn't it's decreasing? That was a really poor statement for me to make in hindsight, because that would give the impression that inflation was actually now so unsubstantial that we were talking about prices dropping dramatically. And that would obviously not be true in July of 2023. It's still not true now. Inflation has decreased. It's decreased a lot, but it is still a concern. That's a factor of the business cycle. Also under the business cycle, yeah. So nothing really to say there, but this is when I was really studying a lot of economic theory. So business cycle, I probably wouldn't use that same term as a reason for inflation, or as it even really is a major factor for inflation, but I certainly understand my decision there. Joe Biden, you have what is pretty substantially agreed. He's not a very persuasive guy. He used to be. I don't know what I mean there. Persuasive. Probably talking about his oral skills. He used to be a very strong speaker, but it was obviously in 2019 he's reaching a far older age. It becomes more difficult. Senator from Delaware. He was a very passionate public speaker, but unfortunately... So I know that. So what was I talking about that? What was I talking about? He is the oldest president to ever be elected. Yep. Every day he sets a new record of being the oldest president to ever serve the office. Hey, in fact, we're 6 days away from him turning 82 as I'm recording this. And unfortunately, he has lost his ability to kind of galvanize the base. He's very old, and he's prone to gaffes nowadays, which is unfortunate. Now, those are his three big problems. As a result, his unpopularity is prudent, and he's about 40% approval ratings, or usually it averages around about 40 to 45%. As a result, he's got two opponents in what would usually be a fairly uncontested primary. He's got Marianne Williamson, Project... Yeah, I would probably still say, yeah. So I'm just thinking about my statement there saying what would usually be a fairly uncontested primary. There are always perennial candidates. There were in 2012 for Obama, but yeah, this was far more significant than usual. Of Angel Food, which was a charity in Los Angeles. And then we have RFK Jr. He is the big opponent to Joe Biden in this election. The big opponent to Joe Biden, at least in his primary, as a result of his social moderation and his proponent of something called Kennedy Democrats. So he fashions himself a Kennedy Democrat, which is a term that was basically coined by, John Kennedy, who was pretty actually moderate. And he was also... So give some insight into that. If you watch my presidential tier list video, the second one that I did, I think, the first one will have been privated, but the second video that I did, I talked about how Kennedy was a moderate, John F. Kennedy, and he was. He was a fervent anti-communist. He did pass a bill to lower taxes. Yeah, I would call him a similar, a moderate Democrat, similar to the style of someone like Bill Clinton in a lot of ways. That's what I'd probably say. Prudent anti-communist, and that is what RFK Jr. So that's another use of the word prudent, but it wouldn't be prudent, it'd be fervent. Jr. is proposing, which is fairly popular in the eyes of a lot of old school Democrats, which means that through the primary thing is that there weren't a lot of, that's true, but there wouldn't be a lot of old school Democrats anymore. So I think I'm talking about that from a perspective of it's a strong campaign method, but Kennedy was appealing to a base. It's like a Joe Manchin campaign in a lot of ways. It was never really going to go anywhere. He's going to maybe get about 5 or 6%, maybe higher. But also with Robert F. Kennedy, so 5 or 6%. Look, I can't remember the exact polling data for the Democratic nomination. 5 or 6% sounds about right. He's been scrutinized, and he's said some very controversial things about vaccines. He is widely seen as a conspiracy theorist and has some controversial views about the role and operations in the CIA. Ultimately, Joe Biden will be renominated. I can't remember exactly what source I would have been using when I made that. I'd probably focus more on... look, he's made some controversial statements. I have no doubt in that. Now moving on to the Republican
right.
primaries, we have a few. Well, I say a few. You'll notice
It's easy to forget how many there were, but yeah, there were a lot. Okay.
that we have many, many more candidates. This is because the Republican Party does not have an incumbent president, so they have several different candidates they can feel, and they'll have a fairly decent chance of winning. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to go through about four, particularly Chris Christie, Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, and Donald Trump.
Not touching Nikki Haley. Oh wow! All right, we're gonna have some criticism about these decisions.
Those are the
Not even touching Vivek Ramaswamy, and that's so incredible. Listen to the way that the climate was so different in July of 2023 than it was to even a few months later when the debate started happening. Even a month later when the first debate happened, when everyone was talking about Ramaswamy.
Foremost prominent candidates that I'm going to be mentioning.
Nikki Haley should be on that list. She was far more prominent, I think, even at this time, than Chris Christie.
Nikki Haley is another case, but she's fairly prominent, but she's not going to get anywhere. She doesn't have the base.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So that's me talking about Nikki Haley in July of 2023. She's not going to get anywhere. She was the only other candidate to win a state. She won Vermont. Trump swept those primaries, and she won Vermont. Yeah, wow. Okay, so look, I don't know what the atmosphere exactly was like in July of 2023, but I think that was probably a misstatement. I didn't know a lot about Nikki Haley. She was one of the earliest to announce her candidacy. I think she announced in March of 2023. DeSantis was in May. Oh, yeah, it tells you exactly. She was in February of 2023. There you go.
So, for starters, I'll talk about Chris Christie, seeing as he's at the top of the line here. Chris Christie was a popular governor from New Jersey, Republican, moderate, sort of socially moderate, but not really, more conservative than some of the other northern...
I wouldn't call Chris Christie a moderate these days. I'd say he's just probably a neocon. That's probably what I would say.
Northern Republicans. He is someone who was won in landslides when he shouldn't have won in landslides. Got over 60% of the vote, I believe, in his re-election.
Yeah, that was his re-election. I think the opposition candidate was very unpopular. The one that the Democrats nominated.
Campaign. He ran for president in 2016, was fairly moderate, but didn't really excite many people, dropped out early, and then supported Trump.
Fairly moderate. Again, I'm using that term pretty...
Now he's running a campaign of very fervent anti-Trump. He is supremely anti-Trump.
Supremely anti-Trump. Yes, he's heavily anti-Trump.
So that
supremely anti-Trump.
In some cases, he is now overtaking other candidates, despite being what might otherwise be considered the antithesis to the Republican base.
Well, he's not the antithesis to the Republican base. In fact, I'd call him now the epitome of a lot of Republicans, but not in 2024. He would have been in 2015, say. That's why, he was running for president in 2016. Frankly, him coming out so early against Trump, that made sense considering that he was from a northern state. You could call him moderate, I suppose. I don't know a lot about his legislative record, but he was doing so much better in the polls because he had name recognition and because there is a discernible faction within the Republican Party who do not like Trump. They are still present. And so he was appealing to every single one of them.
So he's fairly conservative. He is a proponent of...
So I've just backtracked there. I think this video needed some editing.
Pro-life measures, but not so much to the federal level. He wants all states to come to a consensus. He said that recently, which is where he's more socially moderate, but he is still pretty...
Hang on a minute, because Trump has said the same thing. Trump has said that he's not going to pass a national abortion ban. In fact, I'd say that's more conservative than some of the things that Trump has said. So no, yeah, okay. Again, look, this was a very different time. I had a different understanding of, the electoral process. So I can understand that. I'm not excusing it, but I'm just saying it's a reason.
Conservative. He won't win, despite his...
hey, I got that prediction right.
Campaign, and his fairly exciting campaign. He's been pretty ruthless in his attacks of Trump.
he won't win. He just does not have the popularity that other candidates may have. And considering that he's also quite old school, he was from 2016, which was 8 years ago. I think his time is over. I'm going to skip Ron DeSantis for the moment, come down to Tim Scott. Tim Scott is a very interesting individual. He is the one.
Very interesting individual. So Tim Scott is. Look, they're still releasing the cabinet appointments. Trump is still making his nominations, but there is a decent chance that Tim Scott will have a role in the new administration.
I think, and other very prominent political analysts have said that he would be the most electable Republican. He's very conservative.
Probably, I'd say that's the case. Yeah, probably.
He's from South Carolina.
I don't know that he would have done better than Trump did, because Trump ended up doing very well, swept every single swing state, won the popular vote for the first time in 20 years. So, Tim Scott, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I don't think his political career is over. So we will see. Maybe we'll see.
Vote, which helps Georgia, which is a swing state. He is a senator from South Carolina. He's very popular in South Carolina. He won in landslides. He's an African-American. Tim Scott actually advised President Trump throughout 2020 regarding the Black Lives Matter riots, and he was critical of Donald Trump's handling of them. He actually shares a birthday with me, which I've noticed, and he's also quite younger than some of these other guys. He's 57, which means that he's still got a bit of time left, considering that Trump
I was about to say,
is at 77, 20 years older than this guy. So yes, I would argue that Tim Scott, though, he's just not exciting enough at the moment, and he also doesn't have the base. I'd say give him another 4 or even 8 years, and this guy could be a future.
Well, he won't be the nominee in 4 years. He could be a vice president for Vance in his. It could be a running mate for Vance in his election, but I don't want to be too speculative, but I certainly don't think that Tim Scott's career is over.
National candidate. I'm guessing 2028, my guess.
But, okay. Well, look, I couldn't have known that Trump was going to win and that Vance would be the presumptive nominee for 2028. But if Trump had lost, then yes, Tim Scott would be a very prominent candidate for 2028.
That would be a topic for another day. Finally, Ron DeSantis. Ron Dion DeSantis. It was about 6 months ago that this guy was touted to be the next president of the United States.
So at that time, it would have been... So I would have been talking about March, but it was before March. He peaked in late November of 2022. That was when they were, DeSantis and Trump were polling at 50-50, which was huge. That was enormous. That was when people were saying that Trump was going to start a third party and DeSantis was going to be the Republican nominee. But even in March, I mean, people kind of recognized that DeSantis had lost a lot of his momentum. Talking about it from 6 months, so that was actually in January of 2023 that statement I would have been referring to. Look, DeSantis probably could have been president, but I don't think he ever will now, because his term as governor is up in 2027. He can run for president against Vance in 2028. I don't think he'll get far, certainly not with Trump backing Vance. And Florida is no longer a swing state, so it's not as if anyone needs him on their ticket. I don't think DeSantis will have a role in the Trump administration. And I really don't think there's a pathway for him to the White House, which is not saying I could have known at this time, but it's just interesting to look back on that speculation.
No one could beat him, not even Trump. This guy was above Trump in the polls. This was around November 2022, just after the midterms and right when Trump had done the trading card scheme. He was seen as an idiot. Ron DeSantis came in, won in a landslide in his gubernatorial election.
He did, and that was proof that Florida is turning red, and it has. If you look at the election results, look at Rick Scott, look at Trump, they both swept.
Seen as someone who could provide probably a sensible understanding of the office in regards to both moderate and independent voters.
But he was not a moderate. See, this is one of the things that I got confused over, and I think this was basically in the infancy of my coverage of the 2024 presidential election through covering the primary process, that I was confusing these neocons as moderates, which is something that a lot of people, I think, do, because at the end of the day, when you grow up looking at Trump as the figurehead of the conservative movement, someone who presents pretty broadly as a politician, they can come off as someone, the word might be dignified. So that was a mistake that I think I was consistently making here. I also just wanted to point out that, no, okay, yes, he will still be the incumbent because his election was in 2022. Okay.
But his campaign has been a complete and total failure.
Yeah.
So he announced actually
Yeah, that
relatively
was present even at this time, but absolutely, his launch was a catastrophic, to say the least.
late compared to some of these other people. He announced May 24th, and if you look at these other guys, most of the prominent candidates, with the exception of Chris Christie, they all announced fairly early. So Tim Scott came in May 19th. Donald Trump came in 2022, which was pretty unprecedented.
Well, unprecedented's a strong word. Look, he came in early. He came in very early. He was the first to announce, and it was in November, so it was after the midterms. But you know, I guess the precedent is set now because he's won, so people will copy his victory strategy, supposedly.
But yeah, you find that a lot of these guys, they moved quicker because Ron DeSantis, the reason he moved so slow is because he wanted to enshrine in Florida's constitution that you could run for president and not have to resign the office of governor.
I forgot about that. Yes, that is something that he did. Yeah.
And two, because he wanted to build up the hype with people not knowing whether he was running or not. That's
the hype building thing was huge, and that ended up being. I didn't realize Will Hurd was older than DeSantis. Yeah, the hype building thing was massive, and in hindsight, it was a major mistake because what he should have done is really cement himself as a high poller. As a strong poller, he could have announced in January, and then it could have been a two-way race between the two of them. At which point, I think it could have been closer than it was, so to speak. But yeah, DeSantis' campaign, that was a complete career suicidal move. What he could have done is not run and then endorsed Trump, and then if Trump lost, then he could run in 2028 with the backing of Trump supporters, or he could not run, but still get a position in the Trump administration, say Secretary of State. I mean, they've just given Marco Rubio that position. And then then Vance could run with him, or whoever the VP was. Or he could even be VP in 2028. And then that would be his pathway to the White House. But no, his campaign was naive.
Classic tactic.
What did I say was a classic tactic?
With people not knowing whether he was running or not. That's a classic tactic.
It is.
And it worked for a while, but of course it's failed now because he has run a campaign that has not been aggressive enough in attacking Trump. Chris Christie has done...
Probably, it's a really tough situation. It's paradoxical in a lot of ways because if you attack him, then you're banking on winning the nomination and taking your votes primarily from him. But the people who had stuck with Trump up to that point, you could be pretty sure that they were going to stay that way. So I think probably the solution would have been just to declare himself as more conservative than Trump, which he did in some ways, but...
done that, and he's done well. I mean, relatively, Ron DeSantis is 20 points, 5 points, Chris Christie. But Ron DeSantis, he needed to be more hawkish. He needed to go on the offense, and he needed to take...
Yeah, that was something that he needed to do no matter what, is go on the offensive. Because he had established himself, but he didn't really have something that particular that he was running on. He was kind of just running for president to be president. To have Ron DeSantis be president, and assuming that meant something to people, that was a mistake.
Down Trump and antagonize him if he wanted to get anywhere. I still hold the belief that Ron DeSantis needed not to run in this election.
Yep, so it's good that I picked up on that so early, because in July that wasn't so clear to people, but in hindsight it's become absolute gospel that he shouldn't have run because he's basically committed career suicide because he's no longer in good favor with the Trump camp.
Have waited until 2028, looked as though he was waiting to serve out the rest of his term for Floridians. You'll hear in every one of his speeches, he talks about Florida. He'll talk about what he's doing in Florida. He loves Florida.
So he could go for a Senate seat, but it's Rick Scott and it's Marco Rubio. So Marco Rubio is obviously leaving the Senate to be Secretary of State. What could happen is that DeSantis could appoint a lame duck, someone who's toward the end of their career, then he could run himself in 2028 when that... there isn't a Florida Senate election in 2026. So DeSantis, I don't know if governors can appoint themselves, but that could happen.
And
We could run for
that
no matter
is
what.
what his campaign has been about. It's not been about aggressive conservatism. He has been conservatism. In fact, he attacked Trump in an anti-LGBTQ
Yeah,
plus
I
ad.
remember this. Remember this ad.
Just a few days ago, that's gone viral, and his poll numbers have just completely split. His campaign has been
Hang on, what do I mean by saying split? Because it could be that either that, I think it means decreased. I think it would have to mean decreased.
undeniably weak in comparison to what it could have been, and I am going to say that Ron DeSantis will not win. He's now 30
Yeah, well, I
points
got that
behind
prediction
Trump,
right.
and he used to beat him. That's saying something.
Oh, I don't know
With
if they
that,
ever
let's
beat
go
him. I think they were tying, but yeah.
down to Donald John Trump, former president of the United States and chairman of the Trump Organization. This man will win the Republican nomination of 2024. And here's
Got
why.
that prediction right.
Trump has, I think, 50 points in the polls right now. 50% of the Republican Party's voters are going to vote for Trump. Now, every single one of Trump's supporters, you would usually find that they're die-hard supporters. Maybe 5.
Probably wouldn't say that these days. Votes change, people change, politics change. I guess I could understand it. It's just going to be a matter of well, look, Trump has run his last election and he's won, and he's had the best performance of any Republican since 1988. So obviously there is a coalition there, and it's pretty big.
5 to 10% of them aren't, but I'd say 90% of...
And it's interchangeable. Excuse me, sorry, not interchangeable. It's volatile, fragile, because he improved dramatically upon his 2016 margin from the popular vote perspective.
them plan to support him after what happened in 2020. Now, the fact that he's polling I think a majority, he's usually around 51%. He's now polling a majority in this Republican primary when really it should be a firm battle between Tim Scott and Ron
DeSantis. Really? What am I talking about there? I think I severely overestimated Tim Scott and his electoral favorability, because I know he was popular and yes, he was conservative, but I mean, Mike Pence was doing better than him, and I'm not even talking about Mike Pence.
Trump is... It's interesting. So people are still on board the Trump wagon. His diehard supporters are. He's not going to lose the primaries because in order for that to happen, his opposition would need to be merged. It would need to be...
Yes, that is something I still hold completely true, is that if Trump was going to lose, his opposition would need to be through one source. So DeSantis building a major neoconservative coalition against Trump, he could narrowly eke out a victory, yeah. It was an unorganized protest. It was coming from all over the place, and it was always going to be, because America is so big. America is huge. So there was always going to be a major protest.
One candidate, and then it could be close. I'd say Ron DeSantis and again Tim Scott, either of them could do it, but it'd be very difficult. So no, Trump will win the Republican nomination, which will make the 2024 United States presidential election a rematch election between Joe Biden...
Got that wrong. It was not a rematch. It was predicted to be a rematch for so long, but then of course Biden dropped out.
And Donald Trump. It's the first since 1956, if I go over to that now.
Yeah, look, I had the tab open. Yeah, it would have been the first rematch, but yeah. Kamala Harris, she got in.
You can see here
she became the Democratic nominee, but she lost the election.
Dwight Eisenhower and Adlai Stevenson. But if we go over to the 2024 map,
this is what
I've already set it up. So, I've got
wow. Okay, this is interesting. I've got Florida in pale red. I remember around this time I was talking about Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona being the three to win. I did not understand Arizona's electoral spectrum. And I think I was overestimating the amount of people who would be disgruntled that Trump was denying the results of the 2020 election. Okay, let's see what my prediction is. I can't quite remember what it was. I've got New Hampshire in grey, and I've got Texas in grey. I have Florida in red. Oh, wow. And Iowa in grey. Oh, boy. Okay.
The Republican...
up with that answer, and I've got Kansas in light... Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow. Okay. This is really
confirmed
interesting
states in red. And this is...
Alaska. What is going on in Alaska? I get Virginia and Minnesota, but... Okay. I'm really excited to see what I'm saying here.
And then
all of the blue states are confirmed Democratic states. These are states that aren't going to swing. There's no chance that that either party wins all of them. With the exception of Ohio, I have put Ohio in the Republican.
So what I'm doing, I think I've realized here, is I'm putting all of the states that could swing in a landslide election. I think that's what I'm doing, but I that's probably bad practice. It's not something that I would do now, because if I were, then Florida, Virginia, Ohio, and New Mexico would probably all be grey. Sorry, and Minnesota. They would all have to be grey, because it's either a complete it's a complete coin toss, or it's only the key swing states
column, because I believe the base in Ohio is shifting to the red, but you could still absolutely put that in the toss.
I mean, I wasn't really focusing on Ohio politics at this time, but you can just look at the 2022 Senate elections and look at Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown, I predicted, was going to win easily. Look at the polling. Look at Sherrod Brown's polling. He was set to win, but no, he lost, and he lost pretty easily.
I'm going to put it in the red. Now, what this program does, this is called yet another political map simulator, is that it can simulate the margins between the states
itself. Still use this program today. It's a great system.
So if you have a state, for example, like Kansas, that's a
state... I don't know. I guess because the incumbent governor is Democratic and she retained her... she got re-elected in 2022, but that happened in... hadn't happened yet, but in Kentucky it was the same situation. You had Andy Beshear. Montana, you had John Tester as... Well, he's still there, but he's outgoing. John Tester is the senator.
State, but it's not necessarily confirmed. You can put it with a lighter red or a lighter blue for another state. Now, Colorado's never going to go Republican again. That's a story for another day. But
it's a story for another day. It's a story I should have told on this day, because Colorado used to be a swing state. It was until about 2012, and then it became fervently blue, and that was because they had a number of key races go well for Democrats in there throughout the mid 2010s.
We can sort out the states here between which party they're going to go to.
So now, do it already. Come on, we're excited.
Elephant in the room. The Democrats win the popular vote, no matter what.
Oh, wow. Listen to this confident young chap. Well. The 2020 presidential election begs to differ, because Donald Trump won the popular vote, young Joyo. So what happened there?
Youth takes care of that, and
the youth takes care of that. Look, not a naive thing to say, considering that it had not been since 2004 that a Republican had won the popular vote, and that was under very unique circumstances. So it's not at all a surprise that I would say something like that. And in fact, it was an upset to me. I was never expecting that Trump was going to win the popular vote, but I'm just calling it out as I see the facts. What happened? I was wrong here. I was wrong in my prediction, saying that Democrats are going to win the popular vote. But let's see what my electoral prediction is, please.
Inner city voters and voter turnout.
Urban voters, but it's not just about urban voters. Look at the suburbs. Look at the rural turnout. It changes. The demographics change.
Is going to take care of Joe Biden winning the popular vote no matter what.
See, we can look at the results and see that Harris lost, and Biden was polling significantly worse. So really, I mean, just a pretty poor statement to make. And probably if I were to redo this, I might make, I mean, without the knowledge of what's actually going to happen, but rather with the knowledge and the information that I gained just about learning about the electoral process. So I may have made a similar prediction, but the point is that no matter the methodology used to make a prediction, this was wrong, because Harris lost the popular vote. Trump won.
But the electoral vote is a bit different. So I'm going to start by allocating some states that I think...
Please tell me you put Texas in red.
Each party is going to win. Now I'm going to sort them by which is the most comfortable margin. And for that matter, I'm going to put Iowa for the Republicans.
Okay, so yes, but Texas really should be... I mean, 2022 midterms were not good. Were not great, I don't think, for Texas Democrats. They were okay, but Beto O'Rourke lost the gubernatorial race. Iowa used to be Democratic. Obama won Iowa, I believe, twice. I believe against Romney.
I actually can't remember if he won it in 2012. I think he did. I think he won it in 2012.
Won it by a much smaller
Hey, so did Kerry, I believe. Iowa used to be pretty solidly Democratic.
margin. Iowa flipped in 2016, did not flip to Joe Biden in 2020, and it's not going to flip in 2024. With that
Yep,
said,
that's a true
I'm putting it
statement.
on fairly marginal. It could
No,
theoretically.
that's a little too circumspect, really, because Kansas, I can't get over Kansas being in light red. I mean, Kansas, the Democrats were leading there, yes, for a moment, but not for long.
Go to Biden.
That was only with the early urban turnout, with the early urban vote counts released.
But I just don't believe that it's going to toss.
Just don't believe that it's
this
going
next
to
one that I'm going
toss. That's an odd statement to make.
to do is
I think I know what he mean. I know what I mean.
New Hampshire. That's going to go to the Democrats. Again, marginal. Probably, maybe less so, but still marginal.
So why did you put it in grey?
This infamously flipped the
I mean, I
2000
understand.
election to George Bush. People talk about Florida flipping that election.
Probably shouldn't say infamously, because Florida was infamously the one that flipped that election with about 500 votes. New Hampshire was another case in which it was extremely close, and had Gore won it, he would have also won the election. But
But
I
it
wouldn't say infamously for New Hampshire. Not a lot of people know that New Hampshire was another kind of a bellwether state in 2000.
wasn't just Florida, it was New Hampshire. Now, there is a
It was also New
strengthening
Mexico. It was a couple of states.
rural base in New Hampshire.
It's a
You
very
see
close
that
election.
in the gains the Republicans made in the 2022 midterms. But other than that, I don't think it's going to go to Republicans just yet. Texas is the next one, and it is going to go to Republicans. Now,
I
the
knew I remember
2022
making
midterms
that
were
statement.
very interesting for Texas. You saw gains made by Beto O'Rourke in the gubernatorial election.
Gains, yes, but gains doesn't necessarily mean strong enough to change the margin of the state itself.
Against Governor Greg Abbott,
That's a
which were
long-term
surprising. He
consistent
was
trend.
in the lead. I remember watching that election. He was in
By
the
the way, I think Texas was. Texas was not as close as New York, Illinois, and New Jersey were. I think it was California were. Texas was heavily Republican, so that trend may have just been completely blocked.
lead for quite a while there. City voters have been
That was the early urban. Okay, look, that was one of the first elections that I'd really watched closely. And as it was the first midterm election that I really watched closely. Yeah, it's It was just a situation in which the urban vote had been counted first, and that was why it was ahead first.
becoming stronger in Texas. It's a growing population. Also in Texas, the Uvalde massacre last year was a tragedy.
Yeah, that was a significant
and
event.
its gun ownership is starting to become more of an issue in voters' minds. And there, of course, it always has been an issue, but now
It always has
it's
been an
really
issue. I was right at the beginning, but no, it primarily became an issue because of the Uvalde massacre. But it had, yes, been an issue for a lot of conservatives prior to that. And a lot of, well, in the political sphere, I mean. Conservatives were on one side, Democrats and progressives were on another.
starting to play out there. I think Texas, you can look at Texas being Democratic probably in 4 or 8 years. I don't think
That is not a sound statement at all. I had not looked at Texas polling. That's a very naive and blunt thing to say. Texas is not going, even with the information that you had from the 22 midterms, Texas was not going blue until at least the 2030s. It would not be 4 years away. It would be 8, more likely 12 years. And based on the outcome of this election, my guess is that the earliest we could see Texas becoming blue is about 16 years from now, maybe 12 years. But no, that was a really naive thing to say.
for now, though, I don't believe Texas is going to go Democratic. Now here comes the real swing states. So, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona. These are the states that you have to watch out for. Also in play is Nebraska's 2nd District, which Joe Biden won in 2020, after Obama also won it in 2008. Nebraska and Maine have...
Harris also won it, even though I believe she's won it, actually. Yeah, she has won it, despite losing the election very easily, which signals to me that that is now a firmly Democratic district.
different systems by which they select electoral voters. They do it proportionally instead of first past the post. These are the states that are really critical to either party. You'll see that every one of them, with the exception of Nevada, has over 10 electoral votes, and it is crucial that either party wins these states. So, in regards
just remembering, giving you a quick reminder of the results, Trump won every single swing state here.
Margin of victory, I'm going to put the first and most marginal as Michigan for the Democrats.
Naive,
it is going to be very close.
Trump won it.
But I think ultimately, with the shifting voter base in Michigan is sort of to the Republicans. You're getting a strong suburban base.
So look, the Midwest trend is absolutely going to the Republican Party, but in that case, then it was more significant than expected, especially this cycle. So Michigan should not be considered a. I'm not going to criticize me just for being wrong. If I were to make this prediction again, I'm probably confident in saying that Michigan will go blue again in 2028, especially if Gretchen Whitmer is on the ticket. But the methodology is sound, the result is wrong.
In there, a lot of women, but ultimately, after Trump's numbers in there, I think he lost by about 2 points, maybe 3. I am calling Michigan for the Democrats. That's 50 electoral votes.
I will say that it is, I think, the most marginal swing state. I mean, I think he's done, even though he won it, I think he's done better in Georgia and North Carolina. And he's doing best in he's done best in Arizona. He's won all of them. I think he did better in Pennsylvania than he did in Wisconsin, in fact. Maybe not.
For Joe Biden, up there. It's going to be fairly marginal, but probably I'd say you could actually see a swing to Joe Biden, maybe by about a point or two.
A swing to Joe Biden. Oh my goodness. I was naive.
Maybe, not much, though.
That is not something that, based on the information we had, should have been said. I was never forecasting a swing throughout the rundown period of the election, the 2024 year itself. I was never forecasting a swing to anyone but Trump and the Republican Party.
The next most marginal will be Pennsylvania. That will again go to Joe Biden and the Democrats. Again, very marginal.
Didn't happen.
More marginal.
I think I'm going to forecast a Democratic win here, and I think I'm starting to remember exactly what I said would happen. But it was very wrong, I will tell you. If what I think was my prediction is this, excuse me, if this is what I think my prediction was at the time, then it was very wrong.
Michigan, but still, after the gains that Democrats made in the 2022 midterms, Josh Shapiro, Will Fetterman in the Senate and in the gubernatorial election.
Josh Shapiro and Will Fetterman, they had an incredible amount of resources to win their elections, and Shapiro particularly was going up against a very unpopular opponent.
Respectively, I don't see Pennsylvania going back to the Republicans like it did in 2016. After that is going to be North Carolina, and North Carolina I am putting in the Republicans.
Okay, that's something I got right. So this is not the prediction I thought it would be. But yes, that happened. North Carolina remained red. I didn't know who Mark Robinson was at the time. Or Josh Stein, really, but
in North Carolina in the Republican Party is because for a while in the 2020 election, North Carolina was touted as a state that was going to shift to Joe Biden. After all, it was won by Barack Obama, I believe twice. No, he did not win it in 2012. Sorry, that was Mitt Romney, I believe, won it.
Ooh,
but in any case,
it was 2012. I think he won it in 2012. I think I'm thinking of Ohio. No, Ohio went blue. Georgia, Arizona, they both went red. I'm pretty sure North Carolina went blue in 2012.
Seen as a state that Joe Biden could have won, and he didn't. And it's also an incumbent. The incumbent governor is Democratic, so there will likely be a swing against him as a result of the negative economic pressure. Now, the
incumbent governor was Roy Cooper. He's still the governor. He's the outgoing governor. Coming in is Josh Stein. Yeah, that was a fair statement to make, but couldn't account for Mark Robinson.
Four states, the last four states that we have here: Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada.
So I was really confident that Michigan and Pennsylvania were going to go blue.
These are really the big ones. They are toss-up states. All of these states could go either way. The most marginal of these is Nevada, and I'm going to put Nevada for the Democrats. Again, very marginally, but it went to Joe Biden. I believe it went to Hillary Clinton. Yes, it did. It went to Barack Obama. It went to John Kerry. I believe it went to John Kerry. But
I think it went for Bush. No, it went for Bush in 2004. I actually mentioned that in the comment section.
Nevada's base is shifting. The 2022 midterms did not fare well for the Democrats in Nevada.
No, that's right. They got a Republican governor.
It was actually a Republican flip, which might be enough to give Donald Trump...
Should have mentioned there, gubernatorially.
Of the Republican Party, a boost in there. But again, we're talking about Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Remember that Donald Trump is really only super popular with his, main supporters. Republican voters will likely still vote for him, or at least...
Ooh, I'd say that's inaccurate. I think I had a pretty incoherent understanding of the way that his electoral system was devised, how his base operated.
At least the majority of them will, but after 2020, I don't see every single one of them doing so. And for that reason, I would say that Nevada is going to stick Democratic, but this will be the last election for a long time that it will go to that party. I don't think that in 2028, Nevada will stick to the Democrats. Same thing that I think with Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to be shifting red.
So I still agree with that. Minnesota was closer than it is. Usually, I think the entire Midwest is going to go red, Illinois included. I know it's a very controversial statement. All you need to do is look at the 2024 results. Look at how close it is. It's closer than it should be, is what I will say. I think the entirety of the Midwest is going to go red. I think that Georgia is going to shift blue. I think that Texas is going to shift blue. And that will be 56 electoral votes versus however many you lose as the Democratic Party with all of this shifting red.
Very, very soon, Ohio, North Carolina, and a few of these other states, and the dichotomy between that of Alaska and Kansas going to the Democrats in the future, which is a topic of debate that's a story for another day. But the final
Alaska going to the Democrats. Where did I hear that? Because I don't know where I'm getting that idea from. Because Alaska's pretty firmly red. I mean, I know there was some tight congressional races. I think in North Alaska, maybe.
3 states, the ones that could swing the election either way. It's currently 235 to 265. Where will they go? Well, I am going to predict, first of all, Arizona. Arizona was incredibly marginal in the 2020 election, so much so that there was claims of voter fraud, of course, from Donald Trump and other states.
I think I'm drastically overestimating the impact that had in election integrity in general.
But
I think I'm going to put Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin all in blue.
Ultimately, I think Arizona is going to go to the Democrats.
Yeah, wow.
Very marginally, in fact, probably more.
That would be because of the 2022 midterms. I got that incredibly wrong.
Marginally,
and frankly, with the methodology available, with the data available, this was a poor decision, and it's not one that I would make now.
It did in 2020, but after the 2022 midterms, Katie Hobbs, they flipped that governor's seat. Carrie Lake almost won, but she was very supportive of Trump and supported by Trump.
So that was the preconceived notion, because a lot of people in the 22 midterms who supported Trump, who endorsed Trump, those people didn't survive electorally. So that was a kind of an understanding in 2023 and 22, is that Trump's base was not going to survive, and that he was going to his coalition would split, and so it would result in a similar outcome to 2020. This is me forecasting. Wow, I'm surprised that Arizona is not going to be as close as Georgia or Wisconsin, which is true, but that was from a perspective of it going to the Democrats. Whereas I still characterize it as a pretty firmly red-leaning state. The only reason Ruben Gallego won was because he was going up against Carrie Lake.
And Arizona voters are not fond of Trump at the moment after the 2020 debacle, so Carrie Lake lost. But with that said, I do think Arizona is going to stick Republican in the next few elections.
So I got that right. I got that right at the very least. Yeah, I don't think Arizona's going to go blue. I think it's kind of been a perfect storm for Democrats in Arizona, where you've got a lot of people like Mark Kelly, Kirsten Sinema, Ruben Gallagher, people all over the place, saying they're getting very lucky because of Carrie Lake and because of COVID in 2020. I think Arizona's gonna remain red for the foreseeable
think this is going
future.
to be an anomaly as a result of Trump's nomination. With that said,
So I'm really predicting that Trump is going to be just incredibly unpopular.
I am predicting that with 270 votes surpassed, Joe Biden will win re-election in 2024. As it currently stands.
In fact, he wasn't even the nominee. So yeah, look, obviously it changed quite a lot, but that's really surprising that I was making such a what would be the word, audacious claim.
Now I will talk about Wisconsin and Georgia and and the 2nd District of Nebraska. But yes, Joe Biden, I believe, will win.
Well, this was a very early prediction. It was incredibly early on in the campaign. Okay, so Wisconsin's next. So Georgia, I'm really talking about as a, I guess could go either way. But no, this was not the outcome. The Democrats did not win. I was not accounting for every detail. My methodology was very off in this video, is something that I will say. Not everywhere, but making so confidently the claim that Democrats are going to win Arizona is just a complete, frankly, indication that at this time I didn't really understand Arizona. I knew it a little bit, but I didn't know a lot about what it was as a state.
Slight swing against him, but still with a margin. It depends how the economy fares over the next year, but ultimately I do think he'll win. Now let's go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's another one of those very odd ones. It used to be the Democratic stronghold. It was part of what's called the Blue Wall, but it was part of the Blue Wall back in Michael Dukakis' era. This was something
that's a good point to bring up, because he won Wisconsin. Dukakis won it in '88 when he lost basically every other state that wasn't New York, Massachusetts, in his home state. I think he won Illinois. And Minnesota. He was winning all of the deep blue states.
Walter Mondale thought he could win in 1984.
Yeah, Mondale absolutely targeted Wisconsin. It was, he was never going to win, but he wanted to get something of an electoral base. So he was targeting, of course, his home state of Minnesota. He was targeting Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Maryland, West Virginia. If you can believe it, West Virginia used to be a heavy blue state. Delaware, of course, and places like California was the big one that they would have liked to get. That would have allowed them to maybe surpass 100 electoral votes. But no, 84, the Mondale campaign was not winning. He was the guy who said, Reagan will tax you, so will I. He won't tell you, I just did. Oh boy.
It was a state that you'd never see go Republican. The last time before 2016 it went Republican was in 1984. And then it went for Michael Dukakis and went Democratic until Trump flipped it. Now, the Rust Belt is the region that I believe is moving toward the Republicans. I believe Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan...
That's not the Rust Belt. It's not the Rust Belt, but I can understand the misconception. I would agree with the point that I'm making, that the Midwest is going to move red.
And probably as well, but also Ohio. All of these states you'd see in the next 16 or so years, they're going to be moving to the Republicans.
Yep, I agree with that. I still believe that.
And I don't believe that there is much the Democrats can do to stop that. I think that's a result of a
they
shift.
probably can do something to stop it in Michigan, but they'll need to get pretty lucky. They'll need to get lucky like they did... in the Senate elections in Michigan and Wisconsin this year. They did not get lucky in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is absolutely moving red. That's my belief.
Shifting base. There are more rural voters in Minnesota and Wisconsin now. Minnesota came down to 2 points in 2016. That was incredible. Trump was leading there for a second. But yes, with Wisconsin, again, The 2022 results, Tony Evers won. Tony Evers is the current governor. He's been in the news lately for, being able to expand public school investments for 400 years and funding. That's an interesting story. But I believe that Joe Biden will win Wisconsin.
That's the line item veto.
So very marginal.
So you're putting Wisconsin in blue. All right.
In fact, there will be a swing against.
So far, every single call has been wrong in the swing states. Let's see where I put Georgia. I think I put Georgia in red.
Him as well. But I don't believe that Trump can win it. So that's an increased margin for Joe Biden on that case. Now, before we go over to Georgia, I want to talk about Nebraska's 2nd district and whether I believe it can be won again. I'm just going to be very blunt and quick and say that I do believe it will be won.
Because it is it's moving blue. It's an urban area, it's moving blue.
It's a city district, and there are a lot of inner suburban voters present in there, liberal, left-leaning. I don't know enough about it to make an in-depth response, but I do believe that Joe Biden will win it. It's another electoral vote for him. Finally,
it's still talking about it from a perspective of Joe Biden, because of course Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee for 2024. But of course, we now think about the election results as being between Harris and Trump. So it's not obviously a comment on my my inability, well, rather my lack of clairvoyance, but it is just an interesting statement to make. It's an interesting point to refer to.
Georgia. I've got Georgia on my mind, and Georgia is an interesting one because in the 2022 midterms, you saw every political analyst was talking about Georgia. Georgia. It was Raphael Warnock versus Herschel Walker. It was an incredibly close election. It had to go to a runoff. Raphael Warnock wasn't incredibly popular, but Herschel Walker also had some previous controversies before he came into office. And so
previous controversies is a light way to put it, but yes.
Raphael Warnock won. Both African-American men, but you will see that is the result of an increased voter turnout and diversity and population just generally in Atlanta. You've got a lot of northern diverse individuals coming down to the south. So Atlanta,
that is a phenomenon that's happening, and that is largely the product of COVID, but it's a number of democratic trends and shifts. The south is growing, the north is shrinking. That's something that's happening. The north is losing electoral votes, as is California. The south is gaining them. Georgia's gaining them. Florida's gaining a few. Texas. People are moving to the south.
Power as
and generally it's Democrats. Sometimes it's Republicans, but it is a lot of Democrats who are moving to the south. I think a lot of Republicans moved throughout COVID to Texas from the north because Texas had very relaxed restrictions and lockdowns. So that's probably one of the factors that has made Texas a little bit more, well, I'd say a little bit more. It's incredibly red now. I mean, after these results, I don't think Democrats will be eyeing it up for a while. Colin Allred lost. Harris lost. Florida's another example.
District is growing, and for that reason, Joe Biden will win it.
Wow. Okay. Well, look, I just got every single swing state wrong, with the exception of Nebraska's 2nd district. So, not great, not a great call. And this was Joe Biden. This was the guy who, at the worst of his polling in June, in late June and early July, he was forecasted to not only lose every single swing state, but he was going to lose by upwards of 400 electoral votes. You can lose Minnesota, New Jersey, Virginia. They had internal polling that suggested that he was going to lose Illinois and New York. It was crazy. I cannot believe. Obviously, this wasn't, his cognitive decline wasn't so much covered as much, but I should have at least had a little bit of an ability to see what was going to happen and to see what people were already talking about. But look, I'm going to continue this. We'll watch the conclusion because I recognize that this video has already been going for 70 minutes. So let's just watch the conclusion, and then I'll give my summary on how I think this video was.
Marginally,
and again, how far we've come.
All of these states are incredibly marginal, but ultimately Joe Biden will win. So it's going to turn out to be 303 electoral votes for Joe Biden.
Wow.
And 235 for Donald Trump. Almost identical to the 2020 election.
In fact, it is identical, isn't it? How is it different? What changes?
Completely identical.
Yeah,
state-wise.
Okay, so we figured it out. But, yeah, wow. So I didn't even really forecast a swing. either way, because Trump didn't win. Trump didn't lose North Carolina, and Biden didn't win. Sorry, Biden didn't win North Carolina, and he won every other. According to this early prediction, he would have won every other swing state, which is incredible. So no state is flipped. It would be historic, but ultimately, I think historic. It would be rare. The only one Democrats could flip is North Carolina. I think the only one that Republicans could flip is Wisconsin. Then why did you put that as less marginal? Republicans swept every single swing state and improved their lead in North Carolina. But ultimately, I don't think there is any situation by which Donald Trump, unless there is a complete shift, in external factors until then. A complete shift in external factors. Well, obviously this was an early pick. This was a very early call, and I made different calls along the way. But a major shift in external factors. I know we were just coming off of the 2022 midterms where Democrats had overperformed, but I think I was being a little bit too unrealistic with this prediction that Donald Trump will win. So yes, 235 to 303, Joe Biden wins the popular vote. That is my prediction for now. And that's it. Well, so thank you all for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. I have had a lot of fun making American politics videos over the last few days. The no context video. Wait, so was... Oh, okay. No, he's talking about the no context video. Those were a lot of fun. To him as he, by the way, because this is me from a different time. We're different people in a lot of ways. Of course, I know a lot about this topic. I've been studying it for the last 2 years. Okay. So if you did enjoy this video, please let me know, and I'd be happy to make more. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below, but also join the Discord server. That is where you I think he's just wrapping it now. We're not going to go through that, but the point is that, look, that was the video. 26 minutes. It took me 70 minutes to get through it, which is pretty significant, I would say. Pretty significant indeed. I was not expecting it to go that long, but I'm glad that we were able to have such a substantive conversation. I say substantive conversation. I was able to talk about it to an empty room. Look, here's what I will say. So what is my opinion on this? This was the first video I ever made as an analytical introspection into American politics. This was after making 2 videos that kind of blew up about American politics because it was about no context. It was about memes. It's okay. It's not. I wouldn't perform the same way. I think this call is pretty outlandish with the information that I had. I just wasn't looking at polling. I got to be honest with you. I wasn't looking a lot at the polling data and the information that saw that there would be a major shift between 2020 and 2024 to the Republicans. I'd always, after I looked at that polling, I always forecasted a swing to the Republicans. And after I understood that, I started to get a better grasp. But no one has a perfect grasp. I still don't. I mean, I accurately, in my final prediction, I correctly predicted that Trump would win. But he won every single swing state, and I forecasted that he would lose Pennsylvania and Michigan. And I think and Nevada too. So, as an introduction, I think it works. One of the things that needed to change, I think I did change this, so at least I hope I did, is that the resolution of the screen, not great. I think I improved it. I hope I did. But look, not terrible at all. I mean, he says that he has a great knowledge of American politics. Probably above average, but everything can be refined. So look, I don't know how I'd rank this video. I don't know how I'd rate it. But look, the outpour of support, the absolute flurry of just I don't know what other word there would be other than support, but I got a great deal of feedback that I worked on, some negative feedback, some positive feedback. I was able to hone in on different areas. It was a great experience making this video, and I kind of just wanted to make this video, this reaction, as a kind of response, because I plan to upload more than now that my HSC is over, now that school is done. I am absolutely planning to upload more videos. I've got a few videos planned to come out before Christmas. Um, but yeah, look, it's been such a ride, such a roller coaster. The last, what is this? Talking about it, we started basically in July of 2023. It's now November of 2024. What would that be? That would be 16 months, wouldn't it? That would be 16 months. And that such an incredible amount of change was undergone throughout that time. And so I just kind of wanted to look back on where we started and how far we've come, because now a new chapter is beginning. We're ready to turn the page and open ourselves up to even more new and wonderful experiences as a community. So for that, I am grateful. And I would really say that, I mean, this video got 17,000 views. And in total, the no context videos either got something around 3 million views, 2.5 million views, or something like that, which is just incredible. And I do plan to upload some more no context videos in the future. But yeah, that was my reaction to the complete guide of the 2024 presidential election nominees and who will win from July 9th, 2023. Overall, not bad. I can't believe I dismissed Nikki Haley. I didn't even talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, but of course no one was until those debates. So I give myself a pass there, but yeah, I would genuinely just like to say thank you. And if you are watching this, then I would recommend you join the Discord server and subscribe if you enjoyed. We're going to get some new content rolling out the door as soon as possible. But with that in mind, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.